this horrible, horrible fire. We thank them so much for protecting our city the way they did. We pray for our neighbors up north in Tumora and Chacon and those areas right now. And we ask that there be nobody's life lost or injury during this battle, Lord. And we also ask that you continue to protect our city as the winds have been relentless and the fire has been relentless as well. Thank you to all the emergency management staff, the first responders, police, fire, the ambulance. Thank you.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Romero to...
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
there's a change to the agenda. We can
Okay.
remove the presentation by O'Rourke Media Group.
Okay,
They were unable to make it due to the situation we're going through in the community.
okay.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Romero, second.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Ulibarri. Roll call, please.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Olivari?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Romero, a second by Counselor Olivari. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is public input. We have no public input at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Moving on to mayor's appointments, reports, recognitions, and proclamations. The first we have is the appointment of Mr. Robert Witters to the Finance Committee.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to appoint Robert Witters to the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Romero. Second, please.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Dr. Casey. Roll call, please.
Counselor Olivari?
Yes.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Romero, second by Counselor Casey. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries. Moving on, we have a proclamation of civil emergency and extreme drought conditions. Would you like me to read it, Mr.
Please.
Civil emergency and extreme drought conditions. Whereas the Governor of New Mexico by Executive Order 2022-017 and 2022-022 has declared disaster, drought, and emergency which threatens the safety, health, welfare, and well-being of the residents of Las Vegas and San Miguel County. And whereas the City of Las Vegas is a home rule municipality, and whereas the various fires in the immediate and surrounding areas of the city and San Miguel County are not likely to cease in the immediate and foreseeable future due to the extreme drought conditions. And whereas Resolution 20-15 authorized the mayor and city manager to conduct emergency measures as may be appropriate to safeguard the public health, safety, and welfare of the city's residents and visitors. And whereas the City of Las Vegas Municipal Charter, Article 3, Section 3.02 recognizes the mayor as head of the government for the City of Las Vegas for purposes of responding to civil emergencies. And whereas the population of the City of Las Vegas includes a significant number of elderly persons and others who could be disproportionately and potentially fatally affected by the smoke and collateral effects of the fires and extreme drought. And whereas the mayor has determined that it is in the best interest of the city and the public health, safety, and welfare of the city's residents and visitors to issue this proclamation of civil emergency and extreme drought conditions in the manner provided herein, now therefore be it resolved, I, Louis Trujillo, Mayor of the City of Las Vegas, along with members of the governing body, hereby proclaim this 20th day of April 2022 due to the civil and health emergencies created by fires in the immediate and surrounding areas. I hereby declare the City of Las Vegas to be in extreme drought conditions and urge all residents within the municipal limits of Las Vegas to refrain from any activities that could lead to further fire damage and to conserve water to the best of their ability during this extended extreme drought. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Cassandra.
We have a second proclamation in opposition to closing the VA clinics in New Mexico. Whereas the City of Las Vegas, New Mexico is in agreement with United States Senators Martin Heinrich and Ben Ray Lujan in opposition to the closing of 4 community-based outpatient clinics in Las Vegas, Espanola, Gallup, and Raton. And whereas our veterans were promised and deserve the highest quality health care, and the Department of Veterans Affairs is charged with delivering on the promise. And whereas the Asset and Infrastructure Review Commission is charged with VA facility modernization actions over the next year. And whereas we object to the Air Commission's recommendation to close 4 community-based outpatient clinics which are in rural communities that are already underserved and economically disadvantaged, and adjustment services at several New Mexico VA facilities based on assessments that failed to fully account for the projected veteran demand, community care network inadequacy, and lack of access to telehealth services. And whereas New Mexico veterans have unique and dynamic needs and demographics, as New Mexico has the 9th largest percentage of veterans by state population, and said veteran population is not concentrated in an urban area, but rather dispersed across the 5th largest geographic state in the country. And whereas nearly half of the veterans in New Mexico are over the age of 65, and due to illness, low income, and service-related disabilities, many find it difficult to travel long distances for medical care. And whereas the Health Resources and Services Administration classifies 32 out of 33 of New Mexico's counties as full or partial primary care health professional shortage areas, and additionally the majority of New Mexico's counties are classified as medically underserved areas. And whereas we believe that the proposed closures would reduce the services that our veterans receive, place a strain upon the other VA clinics and local providers in rural New Mexico, and most importantly, cause further harm and injury to our vulnerable veteran population. Now therefore, I, Louis A. Trujillo, Mayor of the City of Las Vegas, along with members of the governing body, hereby proclaim our opposition to the closing of the 4 community-based outpatient clinics in Las Vegas, Espanola, Gallup, and Raton. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Cassandra, could you make sure that the proclamation for the VA clinics gets sent to our Washington delegation?
I certainly will.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any reports?
I do not. I'll yield my time to Office of Emergency Management and the Fire Department here shortly. Thank you.
Not moving on to councilors' reports?
Councilors?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to thank everyone who has been working so diligently during this very challenging month. Everyone has been so stressed and overworked, and they've done just an outstanding job of keeping up with everything. I want to, in particular, point out Maria Galveri, who I think is awesome. She has worked long hours. She's always one step ahead of, it's like she reads our minds and she knows what to be prepared when we ask her. And I appreciate that very much. Interim Chief Span, Mr. Esquivel, Chief Salazar, all of our employees are very much appreciated. Our city manager, city clerk, deputy clerk, everyone has been working very hard to keep everything going and to keep people informed, and I think that that's very important. The most important thing is to make sure that people know what's happening so that they don't, people always have a tendency to think the worst. And so when they're well informed, they know what's going on, and the panic subsides and the fear subsides, and that's what we need right now. We need level-headed people everywhere. And so I want to thank everybody. I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the councilors who have been also very much involved in everything that's going on. I think it's absolutely necessary that we continue to work together so that we can get over this and start to rebuild, hopefully, very soon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Council?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Romero?
just to add to what Councilor Casey said, everyone, from Leo to, and I know Cassandra, we had a meeting on Sunday, and just everybody that has, put the extra hours, chief. And I know interim chief, you might have that interim title, but you know what? You've done a heck of a job, and you've done the job of a chief, so I'm gonna call you chief. Thank you. And Dennis, and just everybody has gone above and beyond. And Maria, I know we've had our differences, but you know what? You've proven yourself to be a leader. I mean, what you've done and prepared us for, thinning of the water treatment plant and everything, you know what? Thank you. I mean, I can't say it enough. Thank you, Maria. And in times like this, and it brings out the best in all of us. And you know what, Mr. Mayor? I'm proud to say we have a good team. We might bump our heads once in a while, but you know what? We have a good team, and I'm proud of what everybody has done in our city and our community. They have stepped up to the panic and to everything that we've been through. And all we could do is pray for our neighbors up north and down south, and hopefully, it doesn't get any worse. But that's all we can do is keep our prayers. But thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Romero.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Ulibarri?
I do want to thank my colleagues for, you guys have done, all police department, fire department, our responders, city manager, Maria, thank you for taking care of our city water. Our neighbors are here very, very scared, they're devastated. The west, especially the west side. I talked to a lot of people, and they say, what's going to happen? So we just keep on praying and keep your hopes up. But we have a good crew. We have a lot of people working in our fires and everything. I want to thank everybody for doing that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Ulibarri. Next order of business, please.
Mr. Mayor, we have our city manager's report, Mr. Leo Maestas.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors.
Welcome, Mr. Maestas, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing
No
too.
problem.
We
We have a
appreciate
good team, and we all communicate well together and jump into action when we need to, so we will keep working hard for the city of Las Vegas.
Thank you, Leo.
So before I get into the presentation of our new employees, I neglected to put it on one of my slides that we've gone through budget hearings with 90% of our directors. We're just going to go through executive offices next for budgeting purposes, and the preliminary budget will be submitted by the end of the beginning of June, I'm sorry. Once that's submitted, if there's anything that needs to be clarified or fixed on that, the final will be brought to Mayor and Council in the first meeting in July, and then it'll be submitted to DFA at the end of July.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to welcome our new employees to the City of Las Vegas family, Mr. James Martinez and his labor in the Solid Waste Department, Mr. Nathan Roy Ball, Recreation Specialist, Christopher Gallegos, Maintenance Worker 2, and Nicholas Romero. Moving on, I'd like to give a briefing on some of our projects that we have ongoing. We have substantial completion on the Romero side of the road project of Romero Salazar. They are moving now over to the Salazar side to do some concrete work on that area and then move on to the paving. It's looking really nice. Those areas were in desperate need of updating. So, moving on to our Great Blocks East Lincoln project. They have poured all the northern side of curbing. They're going to pour sidewalks on Friday morning. Once they're done with that side of the project, they'll move over to start the demolition of the south side of the sidewalks. We have a fluent line project that's going in. There was a portion of this project was sewer, which was a small portion of this project, but this effluent line is going to be starting at the Recreation Center, going north up Mountain View across the Los Niños property and following west on Legion to Hanna Park. This project should be finished by the first week in June, or the end of June, I'm sorry. Moving on to our playground equipment, I know this has been a big topic for the City of Las Vegas and a lot of its constituents. They're almost done with the first installation at Creston Park. Then we'll move on to doing some other landscaping, fencing. We have a shelter coming in, sort of a barbecue shelter that we're going to put in there in some paved area. The contractor will then move on to South Pacific, starting with that portion by next week. And once that portion, South Pacific is done, they'll move on to Lincoln Park. Other projects that I wanted to kind of give a quick briefing on, Hot Springs Boulevard, they've begun the utility work, which is from Bernalillo all the way to Mills Avenue. Once that portion is done, the engineering for the roadway and ADA compliance is, we're close to completion with those drawings, and that will be moved into RFP for that portion of the project after that. That was funded through CDBG funding. That was an award that we received a few months ago. Moving on to Plaza Bridge Street, that was, the punch list walk was done with our project management team yesterday, I believe. And they identified a punch list, and they'll have about 2 to 3 weeks to finish that punch list. Again, they'll clean the roadway. I know there's a lot of silting and dirt and cinders from the winter months, so we'll clean all the roadways, we'll restripe everything, and then we'll clean it one last time before we finish out that project. Camino de las Escuelas will begin demolition next week. There was a lot of engineering that was needed to complete that project, or to begin that project, I should say. North Gonzales, there was water service, a new water line that went in, and new services to all the residents in that area. All that is completed. We have monies that we're going to mill and overlay North Gonzales, starting at Bernalillo, going north, the footprint of the utility project, the water project. Farmers Market, we did have a little bit of money left over from the appropriation that we had from that, and we were able to purchase new windows for that building. So we continue making improvements to that building. Lastly, I wanted to give, obviously we're all our attention is to the wildfire that we've been dealing with for over a month now. As of this morning, we were at over 236,000 acres. We're closing in on the largest wildfire of New Mexico's history, which is at 300,000 acres. That containment has gone down because the footprint continues to grow. So the containment lines on the eastern part are still holding, and I can say that a lot of residents have repopulated those areas in San Miguel County. I would like to bring up Ms. Maria Gilberry to give some of the water updates and some of the projects we've been working with our partners on the water issues.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilors.
Welcome, Maria.
So I did have a chance to visit the watershed on Saturday or Sunday. The days run together a little bit. And I was actually very happy to see the watershed didn't have as much extensive burn as sometimes the maps can project. And some of the locations for the burn are going to be, we'll be able to work with them. So we've been meeting with.
Can I?
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Can I interrupt you so that you could define better what the watershed is?
Right now the watershed, a rough estimate is 90% was in the area of the fire, which can lead us to perceive that 90% of the watershed that leads to our diversion, and it's just a portion of the watershed, but it's what leads to our diversion, was burned, and that is incorrect. There is a lot of it where the fire probably jumped from tree to tree, or it was spotting, and so which leaves a lot of the vegetation still healthy, which will allow the ash that does come off the mountainside, the hillsides, to be collected and retained by some of that vegetation and some of the flood plain area. This will still involve a detailed assessment from the BEAR team, which then our engineers and our consultants will be able to help develop a detailed response, along with the National Forest Service, to be able to address the ash and the debris that is potentially going to impact our water, our river, and our water source. It was I think a little bit more manageable when you see it, that it is something that we can work with and is not as overwhelming as it could have been. But there will still be an issue with ash in entering the river. There still will be a chance for an issue with debris in the river. So we're going to be working with consultants and engineers, not just within the city, but we've got volunteers and assistance from Tierra Montes, NRCS, FEMA, State Forestry, National Forestry. Like I said, the Bear team's going to be coming in, and then I've already been communicating with Ruidoso and Raton and Colfax on those who've already been through something similar. It's not the same. This is a pretty unique situation that we're going to be dealing with, but it is manageable, and we will be able to ensure through multiple ways of making sure that we still have water for the community. So one of the ways that we're looking at it, in addition to trying to make sure that the river is as healthy as possible, that we can continue to divert off the river. Bradner is full, Peterson is full, and we're putting water into Story. Currently, the city is taking almost everything off the river. We're leaving a little bit in the river, and that is due to the Story Project Water Users Association, the Acequias, and the city working together to provide all the water to Story through the city's intake for the community. So these entities are working together. They understand the critical need for us to be able to divert as much water off the river for that planning for this upcoming season, when we'll be dealing with the mitigation. At the same point, we may have to let some water go by as the rains come. So the fact that Story's working with us, the Acequias are working with the city, it's a great cooperative union going on there. In addition, Story recently, along with the Acequias in the city, agreed to no longer to send any effluent out of Story. So we're retaining all the water in Story project for firefighters, for the scoop, for the helicopters, for any of the equipment that can access Story, as well as so that the city can treat the water and use it for human consumption. So the entities that have water in Story or are impacted and use the water off the river are all working together very well. So in addition to, again, trying to make sure that we can continue to maximize the water off the river and still treat it, we're also looking at, we had already been working on bringing our wells online. That was something we were already in process with for Taylor Wells 4 and 2. But in addition, we're looking at being able to bring Taylor Well 7 online. We also have another Taylor Well 6. We're trying to look at possibly the time frame and the cost to equip that. So our wells are going to be critical for helping us get through this time frame when we're going to have the ash coming down the river. There are some other areas that we've looked at over the years, and we're going to relook at those. Highlands has a well. We're going to look at that. And these don't necessarily mean we're going to move forward with them. We're going to assess them and see how they can benefit the community, and whether the time, the effort, the cost comes out in the volume of water that we can add to our system. In addition, we have a recycle lagoon at the water treatment plant. We're going to work with the state on being able to make use of that recycle lagoon. And then we also had some projects that were already in progress that'll improve our system efficiency-wise. That'll also help with our water supply. So our consultants, our engineers, city staff, state, the New Mexico Environment Department has been in contact with us twice a day, every day since this started. And they're also working on helping us get through this. There are some bigger projects that we've presented to our Washington, to the legislators and senators and representatives, possibly some additional SED basins, some river water quality monitoring, and also some assistance with removal of debris. I have a meeting tomorrow with, I think it's forestry, and we're going to start talking about how soon they can start clearing out the national forest and the state lands, and then work with the private entities to help clear the private lands to minimize the impacts to the river. So those are the projects that we're working through and working towards. Today, you might have noticed that there was actually yesterday, a PSA was sent out by the Environment Department and the Department of Health regarding wells for municipal, mutual domestics, wells for private entities, for personal homes. And they had, the purpose of that PSA was to remind them that and it was just a recommendation, it was an advisory. It was not a boil order, it wasn't anything mandatory, it was an advisory that if you were impacted by the fire, if your equipment may have been damaged, if you lost power, you need to make sure that you test your water before you bring your systems back online for those who are using it, everywhere from an individual household up to a mutual domestic. The city was not included in that advisory because we never lost power. We always maintained the quality of our water. We always maintained the treatment of our water to the EPA standards. And so in that letter, in that news release, the Environment Department did try and make sure that they were clear who it did pertain to. And so they didn't reference the city because it didn't pertain to the city. They did reference San Miguel County, and so some people were concerned that that did mean the city. So we have been trying to clarify that. The Environment Department is also working on another news release to make sure they're very clear. That advisory does not pertain to the City of Las Vegas, the City of Las Vegas water, or its residents.
Good news.
Was there anything else I needed to?
I think that's it. One thing I wanted to mention, Mayor and Councilor, is our watershed does not belong to us. We don't own any property in the watershed. It's all private owners in U.S. forests. So we have to provide every possible resource to these private owners that they can mitigate their own lands, which would ultimately benefit the city's water supply. So we'll make sure we supply them with all those resources.
Could you update us on our storage?
So currently, as a matter of fact, I gave that number out just a little while ago. We have 232 million gallons of raw water currently in storage. That's about 74% of our water. That is, and I want to be clear, that means we have about 4 to 5 months of storage in our reservoirs, but we're still taking about 2.5 to 3 days of water off the river every day. So we're adding to that every day. We're taking more than we're currently using, so we're able to add to our reservoir storage. We are in a much better place than we were last year when it comes to water storage. We are in a more challenging place this year due to the fire.
Yeah.
But we will be working through all of those challenges, and they will be challenges, but we have a lot of stakeholders and a lot of people and a lot of entities that are working with us to help us get through this.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks for all your work. Really appreciate you.
Mayor and Council, I'd like to have Mr. Dennis Esquivel join me and give you a quick briefing on what the local emergency operations center is doing here. They're in close communication with the state operations center. They're coordinating resources for any individuals or entities that have been impacted by the fire. Mr. Esquivel.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Councilman, City Manager.
Well,
first of all, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your strong leadership. Without the leadership that we have in our city and our county, all this stuff that's happening behind the scenes wouldn't be possible. So in early May, we asked the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management for assistance in establishing an on-site emergency operations center. They were able to bring in a mobile command unit that's staffed by DHSEM personnel and by emergency managers that are experienced with managing large-scale emergencies. And some of the activities that we have done like this since they got here, we brought in a shelter manager to assist with the residents and the evacuees at the Memorial Middle School building. That was that we needed someone to help manage that after the Red Cross had to leave due to safety concerns as far as the smoke and stuff in there. We've provided the shelter with the tracking forms that we're required to have, that we have to have so we can get in-kind donations and all the documentations for in-kind stuff that we need for the for FEMA. We've had medical supplies provided by El Centro Medical Health Group and Alta Vista Regional Hospital to assist with some of the medical concerns that we had at the evacuation sites. We've established a centralized warehouse for donations. So we have some people that came in that are going to manage that so that it's not a burden on any of the city or county employees. That way we have professionals that know how to manage that stuff in the locations that we need them. We've established, we're continuing to submit 213 forms, which are resource request forms. And those forms are filled out daily and requesting any kind of assistance that we need, anything that comes in to us from the county, from the fire department, from any entity, any requests that you all may need to help you with this, to help with this disaster So we continue to do that. That's why we have a team to help us. They do that basically for a living. We've coordinated PCR COVID testing at the old Memorial Middle School to help mitigate any COVID issues. We've contacted Regis Chavarria, who is with the Pohuacas Pueblo, to shelter the people that do test positive. They have a place to isolate, and that's been an ongoing thing since COVID started, and something that City Manager Maestas worked with really close in helping with that stuff. So we've also secured sleeping quarters for the 57 National Guardsmen at United World College and at Highlands University. We've also got lodging for other volunteers that have come in to help us. And we're assisting now. Not only did this fire affect our county, our city, it's also going probably to affect 3 other counties, which would be Taos County, Mora County, and Colfax County. And we're assisting Mora County in their response and requests. And we're also assisting Colfax County in assisted requests. We did have the fire inspection done today at one of the warehouses so that we can store the tons of donations that are coming in our way. So, and we did meet with FEMA today. I did meet with FEMA. They are here. They've committed to assisting the Emergency Operations Center with anything that we need, and everything that we, because we are using the National Incident Management System, so that we can get stuff as soon as possible, so that we don't have any lag in distribution of supplies and life-saving equipment that we need.
Geez, what a coordination.
Any questions for Mr. Esquivel?
Thank you, Dennis, for all the work that you do. My God, I don't know how, your phone probably doesn't go silent.
And it hasn't stopped, sir.
You know, and thank you for all the work and coordination and your long sleepless nights that you've had, and thank you for just coordinating all those services for Las Vegas. And it's not over, but at least we get some room to breathe and help other communities if we can.
Thank you, sir. And like I said, I'd like to thank you all for your strong leadership, because without it, I couldn't do it alone. It's a team. It's a great team. We have a great team, and we've had some breakdowns, but I think we're doing great, and I think we're all getting along, and I know we're getting along. I know we're doing the right thing, and I'm going to continue working for you all.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you, and I do.
I just, Dennis, again, thank you, for all you do, and like the mayor said, that's right, you do get calls all day long, and you're busy with meetings, taking care of things, but I guess my message here is we need to make sure that, even statewide, we've tried to, issues where other individuals are trying to coordinate their own things. At the end of the day, everything has to come through Dennis and the operations center, because, he can't, we have donations coming from all over, so that's the important part is, everybody in the community, even if you're hosting in-kind or accepting donations, it's very important that we keep track of those donations for in-kind services for FEMA applications when we do apply, so all this in-kind will count towards that. So I think it's important that we send that message out, try to track it somehow, and bring that information to Dennis, because we are going to have a match, and this in-kind will all count towards that. So thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Any other questions, Mayor and Council?
No.
Thank you. I do have to leave, so please excuse me.
You have another meeting?
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis.
Mr. Mayor, moving on to presentations, not to exceed 10 to 15 minutes per person. We have our tree board presentation by Mr. John Spencer, and I don't see him in the audience. I'm not sure if you got a call or when he was
No, but
coming in.
he's dealing with
He was unable to.
the fire and evacuation stuff.
Moving on to our next item is approval of minutes for April 13th and April 20th, 2022.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the minutes for April 13th and April 20th, 2022. There were itty-bitty, teensy-weensy minor errors, but I already sent them in to Sandra to fix. So I move approval.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Dr. Casey to approve the minutes for April 13th and April 20th. I'll entertain a second, please.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Ulibarri. Roll call, please.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Olivari?
Yes.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Casey, a second by Counselor Olivari. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving on to our business items. Business item 1, request approval of encroachment agreement between the City of Las Vegas and 12th Street Compound LLC, a New Mexico limited liability company. We have our city attorney, Scott Aaron, present.
Come on.
Welcome, Scott.
Did you need the projector?
No. Well, they've got copies of what it is in the map.
Make it back.
Good. So, Mayor and Councilors, this is a piece of property on the corner of 12th Street and Rosenwald. It's a compound that includes a few different structures. There's a house on the property, and there's 2 sets of apartments that are on the property. And I pulled up, I've got a map there for you guys to look at, which basically I've highlighted in yellow where the sidewalk would normally be. There's not a sidewalk there. But the property, when it was built, it encroaches upon the easement that the city would have if the city had put a sidewalk in there. And because there's an encroachment, it's hanging up the closing and the sale of this property. And so I worked with another attorney to put together this encroachment agreement. I didn't put it together, but I reviewed it. We made some changes to it, and it basically just allows those buildings to remain where they're at, so long as they're maintained and taken care of. And so that's what we're asking this council to do tonight, is to approve this encroachment agreement that would just allow the property to encroach very minorly into the city's easement, or I guess almost a right-of-way through there. And that would allow this property to be sold and closed, the title company won't close without the encroachment agreement. And I know I've brought these to you guys before, so this isn't something new. But if there's any questions, we're happy to do our best to answer.
It's a pleasure of the council.
Mr. Mayor, just one question.
David?
Just for the record, I'm pretty sure my answer is, but public safety, none of that is affected on that encroachment part?
No, there's nothing here that's, as far as I know, there's no lines or anything that are laid in this portion here that we're asking for the encroachment agreement covers.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, may I have a point of personal privilege before we do that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I've known Pam and Doyle Daves for quite a long time, and it makes me sad that they're leaving Las Vegas. They're fantastic, wonderful, giving, generous, kind, loving people, and
So if we don't approve this, then they can't sell their property. And then they can stay in Las Vegas, so.
That is correct, Your Honor. I have an 1880 building that encroaches on this sidewalk, and I have a 1950 building that encroaches on this sidewalk, which was planned, of course, after these 2 buildings.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Sure.
I move that we approve the encroachment agreement between the City of Las Vegas and 12th Street Compound LLC, Limited Liability Company.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Dr. Casey. I'll entertain a second, please.
Second.
Second by Mr. Romero. Roll call, please.
Counselor Olivari?
Yes.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Casey, a second by Counselor Romero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you. I'm grieving for the death of a granddaughter.
Oh,
So
Oh.
if you'll excuse me.
next order of business, please.
Business item 2, request approval of resolution 22-23, establishing a timeline and procedure for filling the newly created 5th city council position. We have our city attorney, Scott Aaron.
Okay, Mayor and councilors, this is a result of the most recent election where there was a 5th counselor, as you guys all know, that was approved by the voters. And what this resolution does is, rather than having the council fill that seat, this would allow the electorate to fill that seat at the upcoming election. And this is the 5th city councilor that was elected to represent the city at large, so it won't be just one specific ward. This would be a citywide at-large position. And so this is just a resolution that states that so that the community knows what's going on and knows that the upcoming election, that the electorate's going to be the one who fills this position.
Mr. Mayor, and just for clarification, when you say upcoming election, you mean the next regularly scheduled city election?
That is correct.
Okay. Just so that folks in the audience know what we're talking about.
Right.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I move approval of Resolution 22-23 to establish a timeline for filling the newly created 5th city council position.
There's a motion on the floor by Dr. Casey. I will accept a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Romero. Roll call us, please.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Olivari?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Casey, a second by Counselor Romero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 3, request approval of addendum number 3 to contract 3555-19 with GGH Wagon Mound LLC for disposal of solid waste. We have our Utilities Director, Maria Gilvari.
Welcome, Maria.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, GGH in Wagon Mound has been our disposal site for many years, and they've taken really good care of the city. I believe it was last year or the year before it actually changed hands, and we've been working very well with the new owner. They even have stayed open this past few weeks over the weekend and additional hours to help take accept some of our waste from the community members who are trying to help clean up their yards to minimize fire danger. This will be the last extension on this agreement, then we will have to go back out to RFP or RFB again at the end of this year. So this agreement, this addendum would be for 1 more year, extending it from June of 2022 to June of 2023.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve addendum number 3, contract 3555-19.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Romero. Second, please.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Ulibarri. Roll
Can
call.
we ask questions, please?
Sure.
Okay, just as a reminder, I tried to find my notes from years ago when we first approved this, but I couldn't. They're somewhere. How much do we pay per month on
It is
more or
paid.
less, because it varies?
It varies because it is paid based on the weight, the volume that we take, and roughly $30,000 per month is what our invoice is every month. But it does range from the mid-20s to, I'm going to expect this month's is going to be a little bit higher.
I expect that too. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, that was my only question.
You're welcome. Roll call, please.
Counselor Olivari?
Yes.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Romero, second by Counselor Olivari. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 4. Excuse me 1 second. Is request approval to reject bids received for RFB 2022-24 for the solid waste transfer station facility drainage improvements project. Maria Gilvari, Utilities Director.
Thank you. So we did put out to bid a project to work on grading and drainage at the solid waste facility. We do get a lot of runoff that ends up in our scale, which costs money to repair the scale. It is not, when we do get rains, it is a challenge for the heavy equipment plus our visitors. So we have been working on a grading and drainage project. several of our projects are becoming much more costly this year. And this one was one of them. It came in a lot higher than the engineer's estimate, as well as came in higher than the amount of funding that we had budgeted for this project. Enough that I don't have another location to pull the money out of, and we did do it in bid alternates, and it still wouldn't work for this year. So I'm requesting that we reject all bids, give us time to work on either additional funding or adding more to our budget for next year, and even looking at possibly partitioning this project into a couple smaller sections. But right now, the bid prices from both contractors, which was Hayes Plumbing and Heating and Pacheco Construction, are well outside the budgeted amount. So I'm requesting to reject all bids, and we'll come back and rebid it at a future date.
Very well. What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we reject the bids received for the RFB 2022-24, the solid waste transfer station facility drainage improvement project.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Dr. Casey. A second, please.
Second.
Second by Mr. Romero. Roll call, please.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Olivari?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Casey, a second by Counselor Romero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilors.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks for being here.
Moving on to item number 5, request approval of Resolution 22-24, update of signature authority on the City of Las Vegas Wells Fargo bank accounts. We have our interim finance director, Dominic Chavez.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Welcome,
City
Dominic.
Manager.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, sir. I'm here to request approval of signature authority under 2 Wells Fargo accounts to remove Mr. Jesus Baquera and add myself as the new signature authority.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve resolution 22-24.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Romero, a second by Dr. Casey. Roll call, please.
Counselor Olivari?
Yes.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Romero, second by Counselor Casey. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries. Item number 6, request approval of Resolution 22-25, a budget adjustment for the 2021-2022 fiscal year. Mr. Chavez?
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'm here to request the approval of a revenue and expense adjustment to Fund 217. A reason being, originally it was done on Resolution 2144. However, it should have never taken place. It was repealed and replaced in 2207, but was still incorrect. So I'm just making that correction back to where it should have been originally.
Do you know why it was done that way? And
Honestly, I don't. The first resolution should have never taken place. The second resolution did it and reversed it, but now I need to put it back to where it belongs.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, how
There's-
fun you must have.
Yeah,
Jeez.
a little over $15,000, but
Yeah.
we need to put it back where it belongs.
Thank you. What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of Resolution 22-25, the budget adjustment for 2021-22 fiscal year, the appropriated amount of $30,272.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor
Second,
by
Mr. Mayor.
Dr. Casey, a second by Mr. Olivari. Roll call, please.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Olivari?
Yes.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Casey, a second by Counselor Olivari. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Dominic, thank you for stepping up. And I know a lot of things that you have to kind of get in there and, need to address, but we thank you for stepping up and we appreciate
No problem. Thank you all. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. Thanks for being here.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, item number 7, request approval to publish ordinance 22-03. This is an ordinance to amend the code of the City of Las Vegas by adding a new chapter 15 entitled Elections. This ordinance is enacted pursuant to sections 2.02 of the City of Las Vegas Municipal Charter and is an exercise of the City of Las Vegas home rule powers. I will be presenting this. If you'd like, I can go to the front.
Welcome. Yes, please. Thank you, Cassandra.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Councilors.
Welcome, Cassandra.
Not used to being on this end.
I know.
And I'm happy to be here to present this ordinance to you for publication. I've been trying to get this ordinance to the council for a few years now. As you know, the Local Election Act passed July of 2018. And what that did is it repealed our election code that we used to follow, our municipal election code. Repealed that, and now we have just one election code that everybody follows. So within that local election act, there was an option that we could bring to council that would give the council the option to opt in to our local regular election, which the county administers. So I brought before you tonight this ordinance for consideration, and within that ordinance, we have a couple of options. And I'm sure you've reviewed and gone over those two options. The first option being, and they're each listed in the ordinance itself, so whichever option you choose to go with this ordinance to opt in, there is an option to shorten the, or reduce the length of the elected official's term, or the second option is to lengthen the term. And option one is the shorter term, and that one basically would shorten your terms. For example, wards 2 and 3, where in the mayor, and actually the now including that 5th council member. So that would shorten, with that first option being, you would instead of serving how we currently serve on even, we have election on the even numbered years. So that would shorten the term instead of going through the end of March. That would shorten the term to the end of December of that 2023,
Prior
December
to the
31st,
election.
2023. So you would have 3 months shorter. So if you picked option one, that would shorten the term, 3 months. That's an example. If option two was chosen, that would extend the term of elected officials, and using the same example of wards 2, 3, and the mayor and the 5th councillor. So at that point, you would then, instead of having the election in the even year, you would extend it for a year and 9 months. So we're looking at 21 months of an extension. So you would, instead of ending your term that March 31st, you would continue the rest of that year, and you would continue to the following year, the end of that year, and then the new counselor or council would take effect January 1st of that following year. So you can see by reading the years that have been listed in the ordinance itself. So it gives you option one, to begin with the regular local election in November of 2023. So we would utilize that for the shortened term. The terms of the office for the current municipal office holders shall be adjusted so that municipal officers elected or appointed to a term ending in 2024 shall serve until December 31st, 2023. The new term of the position shall be elected at the regular local election in November of 2023, and the new term would commence January 1st, 2024. So that's, and then for the municipal officers elected or appointed to a term ending in 2026, that's looking at wards 1, 4, and the judge. That would, they would serve until December 31st, 2025. And the new term of the position would be elected at the regular local election in November 2025, and the new term would commence January 1st of 2026. Okay, that's the shortened term. The lengthened term would then, the local election would be held in November of 2025 rather than 2023. Okay? So that means that the municipal officers elected to a term ending in 2024 would serve until December 31st, 2025. And that would be wards 2, 3, the mayor and the 5th member. The new term of the position would be elected at the local election in November of 2025, and the new term would commence January 1st, 2026. Now, the other municipal officers, the ones in wards 1 and 4, and judge, would be elected or appointed to a term ending in 2026 and would serve until December 31st, 2027. And the new term of the position would be elected at the regular local election in November of 2027, and the new term would commence January 1st of 2028. So that extends, that option extends the terms for that 21 months. So your options are to choose the shortening of the term of 3 months, or the other option is to extend the term for the 21 months.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Romero?
I just want to make this comment. Thank you, Cassandra, because I know, and Councilor Casey was here actually when we really tried to do this way back then. Number one, there's a cost saving. Number two, and we need to, be clear on this, this is something that was a state statute that was enacted in 2018. The school boards at that time did the same thing, so it's not like the city of Las Vegas, we're behind times because, we won't talk about that, but we should have done this back then.
Well, may I interrupt real
Yeah.
quick? The previous administration decided, it was a unilateral decision made by the former mayor, and we did not agree with it, and we were totally ignored. This is why we're trying to fix what we should have done several years ago.
So again, school boards did it, they extended their terms. So it's nothing like the city of Las Vegas or the council that's here today is doing something out of the ordinary. What's happened is, in order to increase voter turnout, is they want all the nonpartisan elections to be into one instead of school boards were in February, community colleges were in March, city, municipal elections were the following year on even years. So the whole thing is to increase voter turnout, and I think we've seen that within the school board. When the school boards hold their, they have the school board, the acequias, all those elections all in one, and all we're doing is tying to this. So moving forward, you will be able to go to that one election, be able to vote for your school board, your acequia association, your co-op elections, all those nonpartisan positions will be at one election, and that's all this is we're doing. And at the same time, it's going to save us quite a bit, the city of Las Vegas.
That is correct, Counselor. And just so you know, on the ballot, the municipal elected officials will be first on the ballot.
Okay.
So,
That's good. That's Nancy. What's the pleasure of the council?
I move that we approve that we approve to publish the ordinance 22-03 with option number 2.
Second, Mr. Mayor?
There's a motion on the floor by Dr. Casey, second by Mr. Romero. Roll call, please.
Counselor Olivari?
Yes.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Casey, a second by Counselor Romero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
Mr.
for
Mayor,
your-
I will bring this back to the council after publication for adoption, and that will be next month.
Thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you, Mayor and
I
Council.
know it was, for a while there, it was hard to understand, but thank you for your help.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Next order of business,
Moving
please.
on to item number 8, this is request approval of contract between Plaza Hotel Las Vegas, New Mexico LLC and the City of Las Vegas for the purchase of the Valencia Street parking behind the hotel. We have our city manager, Leo Maestas.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. This topic came up July of last year about the option of selling, give or take, 14 spots that are positioned behind the Plaza Hotel. Nothing was done at the time during the July meeting, and the topic has resurfaced, and we would like to bring it to your attention and see where you'd like to go with this.
I have a question on this. The improvements that have already been done to that back area, where they installed the new parking closer to the bank and then the parking in the back, I understand that was paid for by the Plaza Hotel?
I could not tell you. I know that the parking spaces that we're talking about here are on the south side of Valencia, right next to the building. The ones on the north side of Valencia are not the City of Las Vegas's property.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we approve the contract between the Plaza Hotel and the City of Las Vegas for the purchase of the Valencia Street parking behind the hotel. I believe that is used pretty much by hotel patrons, and if they're willing to buy it, I think it's a very small piece of property that we would be wise to make a little bit of money on it, and it's already being used anyway, so I think we should approve it.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Dr. Casey.
Mr. Mayor, I want to make a comment.
Sure.
Is, and no disrespect, Mr. Alfeld is, and I've said this before, we have the issues where we don't have enough parking at the plaza, and me personally, I don't see selling property to where it just can be used by the plaza, and to me, I think those parking should be public parking spaces, and I just want to make that comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Anybody?
you know what I seen behind that plaza? I seen that the owners of the plaza, they're always parking on that parking area all the time, So usually our citizens don't really park there, or whoever wants to park there, because it's occupied by the plaza now. So, I think that to selling it, and I say we don't have enough parking around our plaza, it would keep a lot of citizens where we park, because we did improve the parking around the plaza. But just by selling it to the plaza and then keeping, where else are we gonna keep people from parking now? So it's, I don't see selling it to you guys. That's not my thing, so.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask Mr. Afelt how many parking spaces are there?
Welcome, Alan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So, I think you know that what kills historic downtowns is a lack of parking. And Las Vegas doesn't have sufficient parking in the historic district anywhere for any business. And the Plaza Hotel is a 70-room hotel with a large ballroom, a large dining room, a large kitchen, and a bar, and no parking spaces. No one would ever build or operate a hotel under those conditions. And that's why there hasn't been a hotel built in Las Vegas in downtown in 100 years. The only things you ever build now are on a highway because you can acquire sufficient parking for your staff and everybody else. So we've always had a good working relationship with the church and with the adjoining property owners to share the parking. I think the precedent was set at the Castaneda Hotel, where I did acquire a couple of small pieces of land from the city. And that parking, although I acquired it, I don't own it, it belongs to a nonprofit foundation. And that parking is used by everyone. It's used by Tom and Tina Clayton across the street. It's used by Mike Roybal and his staff. It's used by everyone. But the simple fact is the city wasn't going to pay for those improvements. The property we're talking about on Valencia Avenue has been in deplorable condition for decades. It's unsafe. It's not to code. The sidewalk is unsafe and not to code. So what happened at the Castaneda in the previous administration was I purchased 2 tiny strips of land and I made it much safer. Now police can circulate, now fire can circulate, and now there's a lot more parking than there was before. So obviously an issue for me and for everybody else around the plaza and everybody in the historic district is inadequate parking. We don't restrict or prevent anyone from parking in the spaces. But what would happen by this transfer is we would improve the parking. 2 years ago, we were sued on the other side of the property on the front steps, and our insurance company settled with them, but those steps were falling apart on city property, and I was unable to repair them or improve them, even though I came to the city and asked for permission to do that. It's only a matter of time before you do get sued because it's unsafe. There are huge potholes on the Valencia Avenue Strip. I'm just trying to fix the problem and make it better. It's not about ownership or control, it's about me having the ability and resources and means to fix it and make it better. And at the end of the day, that's my objective with everything I do in Las Vegas. I've never made $1 in Las Vegas. All I'm
And-
trying to do is make things better.
And those would be public parkings?
They're public parking spaces.
Yeah, okay.
The other thing we're trying to solve there, for anyone who knows the organization of the plaza, is that the north side of the hotel through Valencia Avenue exits through a blind hallway. And over the years, as the police department knows, we've had many thefts from there. It's unsafe for our staff, it's unsafe for our guests, it's unsafe for the community members. So part of the reason that we want to purchase this piece is that we can also make a new entrance on Valencia's side that goes directly into the front desk area, which makes it safer for everyone. I can't make these improvements without control of the space. So that's my objective here. I'm going to make it better, and I'm going to pay for it all myself.
Thank you. Very well. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Is there a second? No second? The motion dies?
Correct.
Thank you.
That concludes the business items. Is there a need for executive session?
Is there a need for executive session? Entertain for adjournment?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All right. There's a motion on the floor by Dr. Casey, second by Mr. Ulibarri. Roll call, please.
Counselor Olivari?
Yes.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Have a motion by Counselor Casey, a second by Counselor Olivari. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.